Hey everybody, welcome back to the Caves Cast podcast. I'm Jeremy,
And I'm Ryan.
and we are going to be talking about not one but two issues of the Immortal Thor. We were on a break when this one came out, and there was only like 2 weeks between issue 7 and issue 8, so we figured we'd cover them both. Um, with issue 7, it's kind of more of the same, where we were in the middle of that like retold tale of Thor 277, or that like more traditional myth.
Right.
But the only like there are some key differences here. I mean, we'll just go over really fast because I want to spend the bulk of it on issue 8. Um, in issue set, like what I like about the issue 7 is like we really get to see Utgard Loki and like his all his glory, and he just looks so good, man. Martin Kokolo does a good job of designing him and looks very like ethereal and like of another world, which is kind
Yeah.
of what we want from him. Um, and it kind of plays out the same for the most part, other than a few minor changes. Like this is the only time in the three times that Thor has done this, like this trial, that he makes a notation of the mead, which is really just the sea itself.
Right.
Um, like he notates that it tastes bad basically, and I mean, it's just small, minor differences, but things like that you can attribute to him being more cosmically aware and being the All Father and kind of realizing that things are different.
Right.
Um, and then the second being when uh Loki is getting ready to run his race. And I don't remember what. Oh, Hugi was the original, and he even says that. But then this young boy says, "I am Loki." Kind of looks like that younger aspect of Loki when he was Kid Loki.
Right.
And these are probably all very purposeful changes by Ewing and for the in terms of the story itself and what Utgar Loki's trying to pull. Um, and then the only other thing I think is noteworthy is closer to the end, when when Loki is like retelling the tale to Thor in present day, he kind of notices that there's like a third party, like another influence from the outside, and it even shows him on the panel, like he looks off to the side, and I think that happens multiple times throughout the issue. Yeah, did you hear something? Is what he says the first time,
Yeah.
and and this is probably in very much in reference to Amora and Scourge and what Dario Agger have been doing with having, with Roxxon having acquired the in-universe tales of these,
You're right.
you know. So it's cool to see all the layers kind of just stacked on top of each other, and like Loki being aware of that with his role as a teller of tales, and like just what we know of him being able to like out step outside of like the actual narrative.
Right.
Um, and like all of it's revealed at the end that like Utgard Loki was actually Skrymir, but he's not just a magician, like he is deep magic. And then the knot on the bag is the was a thread of eternity's fate, and it can't be cut.
Yeah.
And then when Thor brought Yarnborn down onto Skrymir, he he didn't get cut, not because he stopped himself, but because he had moved a mountain in lieu, like in its
Oh,
place. So
yeah.
and that's just like to attest to the fact that that's just the kind of power and magic that Utgard Loki is wielding. Like he's so powerful that when Thor, like in the time that Thor was able to bring down his axe, it
He
ripped
replaced
open a
himself with a
mountain.
mountain. Yeah.
Yeah, in like a fraction of a second, and and then the Logi, which is the contest that Loki had to do with the eating contest,
Oh, yeah.
and it was just the reason that Logi was able to just devour the table and devour all of the food in seconds was because he's like representative of fire, that would burn the realms basically.
Right. Consuming
And
all,
then
basically.
yeah, and then Loki is just Loki's own thoughts that outraced him, you know.
Okay.
And then the horn is just it's the sea, like I said earlier. It's just like an insurmountable trial. Like there's no way he would have been able to accomplish it. But that's just like that's what these trials symbolize is basically him never giving up. And then it was like he basically his like the third trial for Thor is he has to basically survive the grasp of this old woman, but and it's turned out to be death.
Right.
And it's just Thor is he's just got so much willpower and so much determination that he refuses to back down even in death. Even situations where he's faced with death.
Hmm.
Um, and then the last being the cat,
Right. He has to lift the cat, and
and
it
it
kind of
yeah he
just like
lifts the cat.
accordions up on him, like
Yeah, and it just turns into the Midgard serpent. You know,
which that art is
so
awesome, by the way. This art depicting
yeah,
it is so cool.
yeah, yeah. And I love when anytime like somebody like does the Midgard serpent, whether it's in like a cover or it's like in a panel. He's
Yeah.
just like you can't see the whole of him. He's just like just a fraction of him on the page. And
Right.
that's with everything. Like the Simonson cover from
Hmm.
from that run, or the Nick Klein cover in Donny Cates Thor, and
Right.
then the Olivier Coipel variant. Like they're all like pretty close. Like the depictions look pretty close to this. Like it's all just they're just so cool. Those are like some of my favorite Thor covers. Just like how consistent the like just the way the cover is designed, how it's laid out. Like all of those look really cool, and they all look really similar.
Right.
Um, so this kind of ends with Utgard Loki telling them like next time this gate opens, that's the end. Like this is kind of like don't come back. We don't want to see you here again, and if we do, and the gate is reopened, all hell will break loose essentially.
Right.
So then Thor poses the question of there is an Utgard Loki, there is an Utgard Thor. Are there more? Somewhere in that forest beyond that gate is there an Utgard Odin.
Ooh.
Um, and when this issue, as soon as this issue came out, or we had talked about it, I was very confident that it was going to be Buri, which is Thor's great grandfather, aka Tiwaz.
Yeah.
And we'll get into Thor number 8, but those it is it, he this is Tiwaz is what is the name they're going with.
Okay.
So
So that's
it
Boar's
makes me
grandfather. That's Boar's grandfather,
it's
essentially.
Bor's dad.
Okay.
So it's
Okay.
Odin's grandfather.
Gotcha. Okay.
What's interesting about this is um this would be the first time we're acknowledging that he would be an elder god.
Oh. Okay.
Um so up until this point he's had a brief encounter with Thor in the past, but it was like mysterious and Thor was left to like the frozen wastes and Tiwa like nursed him back to health. They battled. He was like testing Thor at that point. So I have a feeling that we'll probably catch back up with that and we'll see if Thor and Tiwaz do encounter, which they probably will, we'll probably see a reference to I think it's 355, or like there's like 3 or 4 issues where it's just like that arc where it's like that happening.
Right.
So I think that's probably we'll probably revisit that and we'll probably get obviously some more added stuff with that and what his role is in all this.
Okay.
But I like this because it does one keep in with the theming of like the Utgard gods and that these ancient beings being around. I never would have guessed that he would have tied, Tiwaz to this, but him being Odin's grandfather, it makes sense.
Right.
Well, because Utgard at this point is just like what we know as of 8 is like it's a realm that exists outside of the other realms, the unrealm or no realm or whatever you want to call it. So to have a character that's already like wandering around and doesn't really have any other purpose other than that, and to give him one and to make him like part of this new pantheon, it's cool. I like
Yeah.
it. So yeah, I mean, really, 7 just wraps up like just retelling that tale, and
Mhm.
then adding a bunch of context and just like making it like modernizing it, but also making it fit within the context of this story
Right.
and not just being a one-off retelling of the myth.
Yeah.
But eight, man, issue 8 is really where like we get a lot of information in this, a
Yeah.
lot, a
There's a lot
lot.
of meat on this bone right here. There's a lot.
Yeah, and I love the fact that it was only 2 weeks out from issue 7 because I just can't get enough of this. It's literally like Christmas every single week this comes out, bro.
Yeah.
Like for me, it's just like praise be to the Owl Father. Because the dude is just it's just
Yeah, he's killing
flawless,
it, dude.
man.
He's killing
Like
it.
and issue 8, it's obviously still Ewing writing, but we have the guest artists of Ibrahim, I don't know how you say that first name. Oh, Roberson. But it's still Matthew Wilson on colors. But I feel like you don't it doesn't miss a beat, man. Like the art is still really phenomenal.
I
Everything
feel
looks
like
good.
it's similar to Kokolo's.
Yeah, and and
It's
and
very
we and we,
similar.
I think we can attribute I think we can attribute that to it being Matthew Wilson on colors. Like I feel
Yeah,
like a lot of the stuff he does is really consistent.
yeah,
But I also think that this was a good change for this issue. One, because the majority of it takes place in like inside of a cave where it's like, and he has like a really gritty feel to his art that Kokolo does not, you know.
right,
So I think this fits. Like it really feels like it fits the what the story is trying to do and like where Thor is going and what his journey is here. It's just a lot of narration with Thor going into this cave. It's funny because when the previews for this came out, I was totally sold on this being the cave that Thor was born in.
uh-huh.
Um, not that's not to say that it isn't because it's still right off the coast of Norway. It says I think right, yeah. So it's still there, still around where Thor could have been born. So I mean, and later on we find out that this cave has another purpose.
Right,
Um, but yeah, so Thor is just exploring the cave and kind of narrating things and saying like, you know, nature is easily betrayed. Nature like is kind of unhappy with the way Earth has gone, and I think that's kind of the vibe that Thor is getting. You know,
right,
it's just like the I don't want to read the narration because it's a lot to read, but there it's just so cool, man. Like the way that he says like Thor came to this place seeking truth, and though he came full in full knowledge that such truth would not be easy heard, there was still a moment when the chill of the air gripped his heart. For what boy does not fear his mother's wrath? Like it's and the writing is just peak, dude. Like it's just so good, and it's cool, man. It just gets me excited every time I read the book.
and they made everything
Um,
look all Lovecrafty.
yeah, and then yeah, and when he finally summons Gaia, she's I think bar maybe one or two other times where she's had a bit more of a monstrous form. For the most part, she's pretty much just like your typical like goddess in Marvel, you know?
Yeah,
Like and that's just because of who she is. Like she's Mother Nature, she's Gaia, she's this nature god, she's this nature god. Like she's been the nature god for every pantheon throughout Earth's history, you know? And it's
right,
because of her being an elder god and she is like of the earth itself. But this is like an aspect of Gaia Thor's never had to deal with before. You know, like every time that he's encountered his mom, she's been graceful and loving and wanting to take care of him, wanting to save him and wanting to like encourage him to do better, you know. But this time, like she's just not having it, you know, and for reasons that I can pretty much understand, you know, like if she's of the earth and she realizes that these humanity is just, you know, destroying the planet, then she has every right to be upset about it, you know.
right.
Um, so Thor comes to ask like why did you do this? Like why did you open the gate? Why did you loose these gods out onto the world? And he's like I'm just like I'm learning all of this and like everything is happening so fast and so like he just basically wants an answer, you know. And Gaia pretty much like addresses him saying like who are you to like to ask this of me? Like who are you like to say these things? Like she looks like she's very condescending to him.
Yeah,
And he's like kind of fed up with it and he just says like he asks her like the name of she who unsealed the gate, who had given him the freedom to wreak all his havoc, and it was your name. And this is like referencing what had happened with Tyrannos when he beat him at the end,
right.
you know. So like that was kind of his first indicator back in issue 5 when he like kind of set him on the path to here, you know. That was that first stepping stone. And as he like and you could see like he's getting pretty worked up about it, like the lightning starts to flare up. And then Gaius is like, I will answer your question. Like it's a fair one, but she also has another one. Yeah, right here. She says, tell me, God, our small God, who are you? Who are you to know my reasons? And
Right.
this like sets him off. Like before I even get to the dialogue, the I love the consistency with the shading on Thor being just the lightning,
Oh, I love that. I love that.
you know?
This
It's and yeah.
Wilson does a great job of like just doing that. I love it. Like he's done it now with like two different artists.
Yeah.
And
Well, like, and that's the thing too, is like, and that's something that they set from like the get-go, is like they let Alex Ross one design the suit, but it was also his idea to make the lightning, the shading on Thor like that.
that was Alex
And that's
Ross's
why,
idea.
yeah, that was
Oh,
Alex
that's dope.
Ross.
That's
And
dope.
so like between Ewing, Ross, and the artists that are on this book, that's supposed to be like a consistency, is they'll use the lightning to shade him in ways that they like where they would normally use like blacks and stuff. Yeah, a lot of it's going to be that lightning, like
Like
really white, bright
illuminating
shading.
him, basically.
Yes,
That's
yeah,
dope.
to give him that like godly feeling, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, Thor's like pissed, man. He always says like who I am the champion of Midgard, the realm you endangered. I am the avenger of those you wronged. I am your child. So like it's here when like things kind of shit. I think Thor's perspective on like what his relationship with his mom is and who he is to her, I think really changes here because she just says, I have many children and you are least among them." And then
Ooh.
she like ensnares him in violence.
Right.
It's weird, man. Like, and I don't know if that's just like the guy is saying like you're the youngest or you're like the one that you know what I mean? Like you're the one that's like not done the least, but like in the grand scheme of the universe and creation, like you're the one that's done the least, or you're the
Or I
one
think
that's
it's
made the
just
least.
going. I think it's going back to just like you're a small god. I've given
Yeah,
birth to
yeah,
bigger
like yeah.
gods,
In
and
terms
you're
of
going.
like yes, but you're probably right. Um, so then she goes back and like says like, "Were you there when the earth was formed? When the demiurge cast his gaze upon the dark of the deep and brought forth titans? Toranos was there, Chthon was there, and Set and Tiwaz were there." Forget they a direct name drop at for Tiwaz, which who we saw at the end of last issue.
Right.
Um, but yeah, I mean this book, this issue is full of name drops from Gaia and from Utgard Loki just in a few pages. Um, and then there he who you call Utgard Loki, whose name we cannot know or speak, was there. I, I find it very interesting that they're like kind of Voldemorting Utgard Loki in a way. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Like they don't talk, and it just drives me nuts because I want to know who it is, and I have no idea who it could
Right.
be. So
But
I
it's
just don't
obviously
know.
just a title, so it's like
Yeah, and like there are like a lot of questions that I have with this series, and we'll stop with that for now, and then like I'll just ask these questions because
for sure.
and then like because that's like next is when the God work picks up like for that next page, but like a lot of my questions stem around like just the mystery of it, like who is Utgard Loki, like what really is his plan. Like we know at the end of the first issue, like he's like really setting out to destroy like the age of Marvels, and we have Agar on the other side of things. So like it's kind of there's a parallel there, but like my one big question being like, what is his identity? Who is he? And two,
Right.
like at what point are we going to start seeing Thor's connection to these Utgard gods? If I mean, they obviously are related to him in some ways because they're the brothers of Gaia.
Right.
But like, what does that and with a lot of the name drops in here, what does that mean for Thor's relation to the other pantheons? Because that's still something that we need to address too. Like Set is the progenitor of the like Egyptian pantheon, and Set's his uncle. So like, how does that relate him to the gods in the Egyptian pantheon? Like, it just connects him to everything. And there's like I have so many questions about it, man.
Yeah.
Like are because Ewing has used those who sit above in shadows in the past. Are we going to see them again? Like that's another question I have. And if he does, are they going to be these gods? Like are the Utgard gods those who sit above in shadows? Like like there's just small connections and small things. And if you're referencing that kind of stuff, Thor's already reached a power level that's almost unmatched for him before, and that's when he was the Rune King. So are we going to get references to that stuff? Is he going to reacquire that power? Because they've also already talked about the kids Odin's children having to make sacrifices for power, and they did that in issue 2 when
Right.
they when we flash back to the Matt Fraction origin where Odin gives up his eye to the tree and he gets his knowledge. So there's just a lot, man. It almost feels like what Ewing is trying to do first is just consolidate Thor's mythology, and so it's just really streamlined.
Right.
So we don't have a lot of these like conflicting origins or contradictory origins for characters. And then I think once we get that laid out is when we'll probably get a lot more new content that's not just dipping back into mythology, from the get
Right.
go. So, I mean, while this book is still just pushing a bunch of new ideas onto readers, it's really, really trying. I think it looks like it's trying really hard to just keep everything like really, really tight knitted.
Right.
So it's easier to understand at a later point.
Yeah. Do you think Utgard Loki is going to be somebody that's already established, or do you think it's going to be somebody just new?
I I don't know, man. And that's just like genuine. Like I just like I think of other characters that have shown up in Thor's past, and I just don't know. Other than it possibly being a tomb, but I don't know, like because it can't be because like there's pages where Utgard Loki and Hela or not Hela, Gaia are like talking. So like that immediately like and that was just based off like you see a tomb and I was like, oh, he's gold, Utgard Loki's gold, and it's like there's both a lot of mystery surrounding them. But
Yeah.
I don't know. Like there's a lot to be revealed still. Um this next page is just all about the God War and how Gaia is like it's been going on for like I think she said centuries that this war was just it's all the gods waging war with the beings that are created in that time. And every page like of the God War is just so cool, man.
Yeah.
So like she eventually asked the demiurge, like, hey, like I've tried to like seed life and I've tried to make this planet grow, but we're stuck. Like it's just war and we need to change basically. So she prays and begs to the demiurge, and he grants her the power to create a new life, and
Right.
that being a tomb. So he basically ends the war on his own. He's like the firstborn. He's a god of the sun, and he like yeah, she literally says the sun was he, and he and God of the sun and God of the sun, and he burned away all that was not needed. The elder gods, first of all. So like it was basically the ace in the hole to stop the war,
Right.
but he had a dark side. So like once the sun set, he would now become the Demigorge. And Thor's fought the Demigorge in the past, and he's won. And he and even now, like Thor even says, like, I faced your first son many times. And then she responds, you faced the Demigorge, you've never fought a tomb. Heed my words, Thor, do not. He
So
has fought
you're
a
basically
tomb.
saying you fought like the nerf transformation, but you haven't fought him.
Yes, yes. So he has fought the Demiurge before. He or not the Demiurge, the Demigorge, and he's also fought a tomb. He has fought a tomb, but he fought him in the sun. I don't remember what issue it was, but it's like basically he's ineffective. Like none of his attacks do anything. And Thor, like he basically like for reasons, I think the fight stalls to a point where the Demigorge comes out and he ends up winning, but he doesn't actually beat a tomb.
Mm.
So and that's what that's in reference to, I think. And then she goes on to say like talk about how like the elder gods survived and like what their plans were, and Gaius, and then it flashes back to
You're good. Oh no.
all right, hopefully that works.
Yeah.
Sorry guys, I that's my bad technical difficulty.
All good.
So yeah, and we'll just make this really quick. So at the end here, we get a lot of name drops because at this point, Gaia and Utgard Loki are the war is over and they're all kind of going their separate ways. Um, she asks him like, "Are you gonna form your own dominion, your own land?" And he says, "Yes." Like, and he said like far from your monstrous son and his monstrous gullet, you know. So he's already taking shots, and he's like pissed about this war being over because this is like part of what he wants, you know.
Right.
Um, and then she says, Tiwa sent a servant with a rumor in its beak that Tyrannos will travel with you. And then he just says, yeah, like I'm taking him with me, you know, and their strength in numbers. He said, Kimur will be with us, and Hooded Medjed, and the blood-handed Nargle, of course. We may build a temple out there, a pantheon, a great hall out in the Utgard. Now the gate is built, and for you, sister, the key, in case you ever wish to unlock it. There's only a couple pages left here, but these are all direct references to gods from other pantheons. Like there's a Mesopotamian god, and I'm pretty sure I think that's um Kemwer. No, sorry. Kemwer is the aspect of Horus
Okay.
and also like an aspect of the bull of a bull god from Egypt.
Yeah.
But then you have Medjed, which is like a cloaked figure with legs, and he shows up in the Book of the Dead in Egypt. But then you have Nargle, and I think he's the Mesopotamian god of like death, war, in fact, pestilence, all that. So
Right.
there seems to be a pretty consistent theme with these gods being like, you know, war makers and, you know, gods of death and all of these like all of the like the worst possible gods in these pantheons, essentially, you know, kind of what it sounds like. Um, so and then it just cuts back to Thor and Gaia, and they're just basically talking like he's telling her like why are you doing this? Like where's the mercy for these people? And he's like, and she just responds with like these are all the things that they've done, and I will force the change upon them if they're not willing to change with me, you know, like so. And she's ready to play hardball, man. Like she's tired of being like just day in and day out just ravaged by humanity. So
Right.
she's ready to take the fight to them, and that was the reason she unleashed the gods or the elder gods. Um, so Thor has had enough, and you know he responds with like, "I've heard this cold rationale before, mother, and I did not accept them then. I will not now." And she says, "No, like you rebel against my judgment," and he says, "I do for the judgment without mercy." And he goes on to just strike her, you know, and he said he's willing to even like so go so far as to defend humanity from the earth itself, which is his mother.
Right.
Um, and then she responds with, but you cannot fight the earth itself, Thor, and you were wrong. There is mercy in my judgment. Long before any of this, when I first saw the road humanity would walk, I gave them one hope. I gave them you, Thor. You are my mercy. And immediately Thor stops the assault on his mom because it just shows you this is where she's at with it.
Right.
She's so fed up with the things that humanity has done to her and to the planet that she's willing to wage war on it. But the one failsafe for Earth to like come back around to show her that they're ready to change and be better for the planet is Thor.
Right.
You know, like that's why, and this is showing this is why she birthed him. Like this was the purpose because like she probably forced being the elder god she is, and all these, you know, what I can imagine is probably some level of omniscience, you know, being able to see the future or whatever. That's cool, man. To basically say like I knew where this would go, so this was the reason you were born to prove to me that humanity is worthy of being like on Earth.
Right. And it makes sense why
So
he's
then,
always so like attached to like Midgard. I gotta save Midgard. I gotta
yeah,
go to Midgard. I gotta
exactly,
like
exactly,
he's always had this
because it's
purpose of just like Midgard, like straight vision like tunnel vision.
yeah, because it's his mom. You're right.
Mhm.
Um, and then it just like that kind of that ends. She just says like if you would have more precise judgment to apply those against those who would end the earth, I suggest you hurry. So we already knew where this was headed because the next couple issues are all Roxxon stuff.
Yeah.
So Thor just comes in, says like, you know, I'm ready for a meeting with Agar, and then she's like, oh, like, what's your nature of business? Like, you know, he won't take an appointment, blah 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 blah, and then he just basically says, here's the hammer. This is who I am. We have unfinished business, you know, and he just rolls in there, getting ready to just take the elevator on up. Uh, yeah, and the next three issues is just going to be all strictly Roxxon stuff. 8 will be, or 9 will be the first issue of that, and then we'll get the Roxxon presents Thor #1. That'll happen, and then sure enough, after that will be 9, no 10, sorry, and then that'll be the end of that 3 issue stuff for now. I can't imagine that we'll be done with those characters for sure. But then we'll jump right back into whatever they've got next, because issue 11 is the Skinner box from that first page in issue 1 with Gods,
Oh, they're bringing that
with
in.
Tyr going into the box. Yeah.
That's cool.
So I don't know. We'll
I
see what
love
happens.
hearing that McKay and Ewing are kind of swapping ideas here. I like that.
Oh, it's Hickman.
No, I know. Like, and now Ewing's using that. You said right
Yeah,
for
yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
So
Sorry,
that's
I thought you
I'm
said that.
loving that they're like borrowing each other's
Yeah.
like
Oh, dude. Yeah, and they're like at a point now where they're just like juggling and throwing one ball at the other guy and then tossing it back when they're done. Man, it's tight.
yeah. That is pretty cool.
So yeah, I would say this is a series that one anybody can read. If you like Thor, or if you just like really really high concept and like multi-layered storytelling, this would be the book for you. On the other side of things, if you're looking for like every single Easter egg and reference and all that to understand, you have to do a lot of prior Thor reading.
Right.
And it's not even just like modern stuff. Like it's like stuff from like the 60s till like even right before Simonson's run. Everything that we've seen for the most part has all been pre 80, 83, 85 or whatever when Simonson's run started. But
Right.
like, and I just imagine we're just gonna dip our toes into every era of Thor throughout this run, just as a way to kind of make everything really really tight by
Well,
the
do
end.
you think then like the goal of Utgard Loki is to get the war started again? Like basically,
Probably,
yeah.
probably, and it's Thor's probably purpose now to stop it.
Right.
And I maybe one day we'll get a God War arc, and it's all of
That'd
the
be
gods.
sick, dude. And it's like the Thor core versus like all of
Yeah,
them,
or
you
like
know?
hell, man. Like even get some of the like the more righteous gods. Like you can pull Hercules in, you can pull other gods from the Greek pantheon, and you can pull gods from the Indian pantheon or from all the other pantheons they're pulling from. Like
That's true.
to introduce like opposing gods, I have to imagine that there are gods that would ally themselves with Thor after they find out what's been happening behind the scenes. Because now we're kind of establishing that there's a relation between all gods here.
Right.
So and if Thor is the main relation, and he's the one to say like, we're all technically family. So let me be the one to bring us together and fight this cause. Like I'm here for it, dude. It'll be
Yeah.
good. It'll
I
be
don't
tight.
know. It's such a deep dive into like all
Yeah.
mythology that it's not even that
Hmm.
you're going into Thor lore and you're
Yeah.
going into the lore of everything. Like basically
Yeah.
Gaia is the connection to all. Like
Yeah. And
all
it's cool,
gods.
man. It's cool to see like Marvel's version of Thor be our guide, not only through like the Marvel universe, but the Marvel's mythology, and then real mythology, because we're getting a really really good lesson in real mythology too.
Yeah.
Or at least it's encouraging me and maybe other people to do more like research into mythology, because it's probably going to come up.
Right. For me,
But
it's just so hard because mythology like that is hard to take some things that they say figuratively or literal
and put it
or
and make it literal, yeah, or vice versa. Yeah,
yeah. So that's what like
yeah,
throws
I
me
get
off. I'm
that.
like, wait, is this real or is this just like a concept?
Right,
So
right, and like and I imagine that some concepts will probably be made real, and the other way around. Like we'll probably get names or references to things, and we may never see them, and we may never get like actual like on the page of what it is. I
right.
don't know. There's a lot to be revealed and a lot to see. So it's kick ass, dude. It's
Well,
awesome.
it seems like Ewing's setting a lot up so that throughout his run, which we know is going to be a little longer, he could pluck,
Yep.
so many different things from it now. So
Yep.
I don't know, dude. I'm stoked for it. This is a Thor story, Thor type of Thor story I've never read before. This is a completely new experience for me. It feels fresh.
Yeah.
It's, you know, I'm hearing a lot of stories about Ewing might be going to DC, but I'm hoping he stays a free agent so he could just stay doing this,
Yeah.
do whatever he
Yeah.
wants.
I'm right. I mean, and even if this ends up being the last thing he writes for Marvel, I'm glad it was something he got to write. And if
Right.
he does jump the ship and goes full on DC, because he is writing that story in the DC Pride in June.
Right. The
So we'll
Starman
see what
story.
happens.
Yeah.
We'll see what
Yeah.
happens.
And he did
All right,
say
guys.
he knows way more about DC than I.
That might be something we have to get into another time, man, because
Yeah,
that's crazy to say that you like this. To have somebody say that you have more knowledge of the DC universe than somebody like Mark Waid or even rivals that, that's a wild statement.
that is
So I would love to see him put his money where his mouth is. You know what I mean? Like let's see it, bro. Like if you can tell if you can give me a guide through the DC universe and make that shit cool, let's do it.
I agree, dude. 100%.
All right, guys. That's all the time we got today. We will catch you next week.
Later
Peace
on,
out.
guys.